Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. We're going to be doing a look back, a review, a reaction to, of course, what we have just witnessed with the entirety of the Manchester City versus Liverpool game. We're still no closer to really determining which side is going to walk away with the Premier League title at the end of the season, following what was an incredible and a high-quality, mad 2-2 draw that played out at the Etihad Stadium this afternoon. But we're going to look into the game. We're going to talk about what the aftermath of this will have and what effect it might have on the team. And, of course, which side may still walk away with the Premier League title. But before we get into all of that, in what was an incredible day, I'm gonna obviously remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things always going to be greatly appreciated. But for now, let's get into the reaction because, let's face it, it was a intense game. It was very intense, very emotional, very high quality. Obviously, there was a high stakes feel to it. The stipulation on the line was simply, or seemingly, whichever side came out of this game with all 3 points would seemingly go on to win the title. These two teams very rarely drop points as it is, so that's how this game was being built up as. I still think there's a lot of football to be played, and I don't think we would have. I think if City had have won it, I think they would have gone on to win the title, whereas if Liverpool had won it, there was still going to be question marks over whether they could handle the pressure and whether they would actually maintain a perfect run till the end of the season. But of course, like I say, with both teams being forced to share a point, with both teams coming away with this with a point apiece, we're still not really any closer to knowing that answer. Obviously, it is now more in City's hands than it was beforehand. Obviously, City remain top of the Premier League. They're obviously a point still ahead of Liverpool. And it is really within their own hands. They just need to now concentrate on themselves, make sure that they don't slip up at any point during the season. And I think when you look at the fixture lists that are remaining for both these teams, I think it's fair to say that City probably have the easier run-in, which we'll get onto a little bit later. But as far as the game itself went, I think 2-2 was probably a fair reflection on the game. I didn't think Liverpool were that great in the first half. They were pretty poor, to be honest with you. They didn't wake up at all. First 5 minutes, obviously, City go 1-0 up. Quick free kick taken. De Bruyne easily pretty much walks past Fabinho and fires a deflected shot beyond Alisson. Fabinho was absolutely shocking today. That is honestly the worst game I have ever seen from Fabinho, and yeah, everyone is due a bad game. Everybody is due a bad game at some point. No one goes through their whole career 100% perfect. I get it, but in a game that he really needed to turn up to, it's just a bitter coincidence that obviously this is the one game in which he had a shocker. His passing was off. His tackling was not as good. His pressing wasn't as good. He just seems sluggish and slow in that midfield, and I think City really capitalised on that. And if it weren't for maybe one or two other poor performances, he may have actually been subbed off earlier. But Liverpool didn't really cover themselves in much glory throughout, and I think there were a couple of poor performances across the pitch overall. The good thing about it was that City obviously deserved to go ahead. They had a chance beforehand. Raheem Sterling forcing a very good save from Alisson. Alisson was on point again today. There was nothing he really could have done about both goals. But City could have opened the scoring much earlier. Raheem Sterling had a great opportunity that was denied by Alisson. But they came back and obviously got the goal through De Bruyne. Liverpool then took the sting out of the game. They got a bit more, they grew more into the game. They got a bit more of the ball, and then they got the goal. They had one opportunity and they took it. Some great play, switching it from diagonal, from wing to wing. Trent Alexander-Arnold tees up Diego Jota, and I think Ederson probably should have done better in trying to save Jota's shot. But ultimately, it squirmed under him and into the back of the net. Liverpool are then back on level terms. And you're thinking, right, game on. This is already intense. Opening 15 minutes of the game or whatever it was. 1-1 is going to be an absolute cracker. And it was, to be fair, it was a high quality, it was a very high quality game. There were some good moments from both teams in an attacking sense. I think in a defensive sense, both teams were rather sloppy. I think Liverpool more so than City. I think Liverpool had more sloppy moments and City threatened more. I think Liverpool just didn't capitalise particularly on City's sloppy moments to the degree that they obviously would have liked, or to the degree that we know that they can on their day. But from there, it went back to the opening 5 minutes again. Liverpool was sloppy. They didn't have control of the game. City grew back into the game. They had more control. And then City go back in front. A cross by Cancelo at the back post finds Gabriel Jesus. And Jesus manages to beat Alisson from close range. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Matic were both playing him on side. You can argue that Matic should have been in line with the defenders. You can argue that Trent should have gone with the runner. Little things like that always happen in these games. There's no point over-analysing it, but I did think that Jesus had a great game for Man City. There are a lot of eyebrows raised when his name was in the starting 11 ahead of one Riyad Mahrez, who I think many people, including myself, would have obviously put into City's starting lineup. But it proved to be a very good decision by Pep Guardiola to use to use his pace. And also what it did is that it was something that I don't think Liverpool particularly would have imagined, because rather than attack the right-hand side, particularly with how much space Trent leaves and trying to attack the space in behind Trent, there was a lot of play that was happening on Liverpool's left-hand side. What City were doing was they were having Jesus tuck in a little bit, drag Robertson out of position, and then it was about the pace of Kyle Walker bombing forward down the outside, and it was a question of whether or not Sadio Mane was going to be tracking him back. And City got a lot of joy from using the wing play. There was actually a lot more crosses from City than I'm normally used to seeing. Granted, I don't watch City all the time, but there did seem to be a lot more use of the wings in this game from Pep Guardiola's side than I think we're used to seeing overall. So that was also a tactic that I particularly noticed. City go ahead at half-time. Liverpool pretty much rather fortunate, I think, in all honesty, to only be 2-1 down. I think City had a couple more chances after that they really could have and should have probably done better with. Liverpool had a chance themselves. Diego Jota should have really pulled the trigger when being played through, but he waited and waited and waited and eventually got challenged. So the game is sort of set up perfectly at half-time for Liverpool to come out and fire back. And to be fair, they instantly replied. Within the opening minute of the restart, Salah's ball through to Sadio Mane, and it's a brilliant finish from Mane. It's a great goal. It's a great pass from Salah. Great finish from Mane. Liverpool are level again on level terms. Thought Mane grew into the game, particularly in the second half. I thought Salah grew into the game in the second half, but he just didn't really have a clear-cut opportunity for himself, did the Egyptian. And I just thought that Cancelo between Cancelo and who else was on that side? I think Cancelo and Laporte. I think both of them kind of doubled up on Salah in particular, and really kind of stopped him from creating much. That was the one real. There was actually moments after where he played through Jota, and I think Jota probably should have done better. Salah definitely grew into the game. He had one of his better games than in recent times, I grant you, but it still wasn't exactly perfect, of course. And like I said, I think City did really well to kind of shadow him out the game, so to speak, and not give him a clear-cut opportunity. The game went on. Both sides had half chances, but I think in the end, City were kind of seeing out the game for a draw. They had a really good opportunity for Riyad Mahrez. Again, Fabinho really poor giving the ball away. Mahrez had a shot on goal in which he tried to loop it over Alisson, but he ended up hitting it over the crossbar. There were a few decent opportunities both sides. Both sides really should have done better with. But overall, like I say, really high quality, intense game of football. The draw, obviously, like I say, does leave it in City's favour. And the annoying part is that a point away at the Etihad is a good result. A point away at the Etihad is definitely a good result. When you throw in, though, the context that this was pretty much a decider for the Premier League title. It's still in City's hands, blah, 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 so on and so forth. It kind of makes it a bit frustrating, especially with the fact that, like I say, I don't think Liverpool properly turned up today. That made it even more annoying. But to say that Liverpool turned up, because I didn't think City were that great either. I thought City were made to look better due to Liverpool being poor, but I think overall City obviously were the slightly better side in the first half. Kind of leveled itself out in the second half, and I think in the end Guardiola was like, we'll just take a point. We'll just take a point and we'll rely on the quality and the depth of our squad to see us through to the rest of the season in perfect fashion. Obviously, it kind of hurts Liverpool a little bit, but they will keep fighting to the bitter end. You know that. It makes the actual semi-final of the FA Cup next week to be even more interesting because there's going to be a lot more riding on that. It's more pressure on Liverpool to actually to actually go on and win that game as well, because they're fighting on multiple fronts, of course. They're fighting to add more trophies to the Carabao Cup that they've already collected this season. And obviously they'll want to get one over on City and get into another final. So it adds even more layers and more intensity to that game as well. As far as the running goes, City have got Brighton at home, Watford at home, Leeds away, Newcastle at home, West Ham away, Villa at home on the final day of the season, and they will also have a Wolves game in there as well that is to be rescheduled. Don't exactly know when that is, I don't think. I don't know if that's been decided yet. But yes, they've got that running. It could be tricky in some cases, but I think in most cases, City are pretty much through. I think, obviously, the dream scenario for Liverpool fans is that Steven Gerrard's Villa gets, obviously, a win on the final day of the season to gift Liverpool the title, assuming that they win, of course. But I think for the most part, City are fine. Brighton not really playing for much. They got a win over Arsenal this weekend, but I don't think that they should be too much of a concern. Watford are battling relegation, but again, don't think that's too much of a concern. Leeds are pretty much safe now. They're entering a good bit of form, but whether or not they take their foot off the gas a little bit because they are safe remains to be seen. Newcastle, a similar fashion, they are now pretty much safe. So whether they take their foot off the gas there and don't really try and go for a shock result remains to be seen. West Ham, I think their top four challenge is over. I think they're going to put all their eggs into the Europa League basket. So that pretty much means that they may, like I say, like the rest of them, take their foot off the gas a little bit. And then obviously Wolves, 50-50 on whether they're going to turn up or not. We don't know what kind of Wolves side we're going to get in that game. And for Villa, hit a bad run of form under Gerrard, but like I said, I think he'll be fired up to try and help Liverpool in any way they can, assuming that Liverpool are still within the title race by that point. Liverpool have Manchester United at home, Everton at home, Newcastle away, Spurs at home, Villa away, Southampton away, and then a final game of the season against Wolves at home. Much more difficult running. You may laugh that Man United's going to be a tough game, but it probably is going to be because obviously United will want to be the team that properly kills off Liverpool's title challenge, and that's what I can see being the being the main incentive in that game for United. I think their top four challenge is pretty much over. They're still obviously mathematically possible, but I think that's pretty much over, and that's going to be the only incentive for the rest of their season is to kill off Liverpool's title challenge. The same with Everton. Of course, they are still battling relegation. They picked up a big 3 points this weekend, coincidentally, against Manchester United. But again, their main incentive is going to be to stop Liverpool winning the title by all means necessary. Newcastle, like we say, they could be pretty much or definitely safe by then, so that's going to be an intriguing game. Spurs at home. Spurs hitting a very, very good bit of form right now, and with the way that Liverpool play, I'm sure that Spurs will love to play their typical counter-attacking style that they can deploy against the big teams. We saw against Manchester City for Spurs. And of course, Spurs will also be challenging for top 4 and looking to see that out as well. So that's going to be an interesting game. The only thing that I have hope on with that game is that obviously Liverpool, quality side, one of the best in Europe. And obviously it's at Anfield as well. So again, it could be interesting to see which way round that game goes. Against Aston Villa, there'll be no handouts from Steven Gerrard, I'm sure. Although he would obviously love for Liverpool to get the 3 points in that game, I'm sure that he'll also want his Villa side to win. So there'll be no handouts there. Southampton, they're safe, not really playing for anything. So again, could take their foot off the pedal a little bit. And as we've already said with Wolves, depends on which Wolves side turns up. But for the most part, we know that they're going to be solid. And they're going to be obviously challenging for European football places as well. So that's going to be interesting. The run-ins are there. They're all laid out. Like I said, I think Liverpool have the more difficult run-in. But that's not to say that, you know, stranger things will happen and that Man City can't drop points during that time, because if they take the foot off if they take the eye off the ball a little bit, and you've also got to consider that both teams are also competing on multiple fronts. You're going to have a Champions League semi-final to throw in there as well if both teams make it that far. Of course, you've got Champions League quarterfinals originally, and of course you've got a big FA Cup semi-final coming up between these two sides next week. So there's multiple different elements to this. There's multiple different aspects to consider all in all. But I think overall, given the run-in, given how good City are, given how good Pep Guardiola is, City should be winning this now. The advantage is now firmly within City's hands. It is definitely within City's hands now, more than it was before kickoff. And that's just the way that it is. Do I see City going on and closing out the title? I think, like I say, I think I've said it. I think given their running, I think you have to say that they will. I think the games that they've got are relatively straightforward for them. No disrespect intended to them teams, but I think they're teams that are either just too poor or teams that are going to be not all completely committed because they're already safe, they're already secure, and they don't need to really go too gung-ho over a game with Manchester City. I see City winning the Premier League title from this point forward, but I'm still obviously going to be hopeful that one of those teams can slip up and Liverpool can go on and have a perfect end to the season. Of course I am, but being realistic, City probably should close the title out from here. And like I say, I'm going to be very much looking forward to Liverpool in the Champions League and FA Cup going forward. But until then, we'll have to obviously wait until those games come around midweek, and obviously this next weekend, because it's going to be another massive week of football ahead of us. But of course, that is all I've got to say on this matter. These are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What did you make of the game today? What did you make of certain standout performers? Like I say, my man of the match for me, as good as Kevin De Bruyne was, I thought Gabriel Jesus gave Andy Robertson and Virgil van Dijk a pretty torrid time. To say that he was a pretty surprising addition to the starting lineup over Riyad Mahrez. I thought, like I say, City played really well first half. Liverpool grew back into the game in the second half. A draw was a fair reflection. But I'd love to know your thoughts, your comments, opinions, predictions, whatever you want to call it, on today's game. And, of course, the title race overall down below in the comment section, because I'm sure it'll make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up. Enjoy the video. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things always and forever be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see and sweep you all again soon in another video.